Okay, good morning everyone. My name's Guy Adams. I'm CTO of DataOps.live. And today we're going to be talking about building data products on Snowflake. Not talking about how we might do it or talking about the theory behind it, but actually hearing from a team that's been doing this for a good number of years now. And we're joined today with one of our very high profile customer we're very honored to have, OneWeb. And so to lead us off is Nadia Moses from OneWeb. Take it away, Nadia.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Nice. Okay, I am Nadia Moses. I'm a data engineer and the self-service data hub at OneWeb, and I'm going to give a brief overview about OneWeb's use case with DataOps. So prior to 2021, OneWeb didn't have a platform where they could store, process and govern data. Teams were doing this by themselves, managing their own tools and techniques to share data request. And this sort of led to a few issues. This wasn't really productive. This could lead to data duplication, delays in analyzing the data, and there was just a problem storing long-term data. So the vision of the self-service data hub was to enable users to share and consume their data and also enhance the end customer experience by providing data-driven insights. And what we wanted to achieve was a platform that could ingest large volumes of data at a high velocity and also apply rules and business logic to the data quickly and at a low cost. And this also included the handling of sensitive data. And we wanted to give an easy self-service mechanism for users so they could control and enrich their data and manage it by themselves. What we wanted to do was also separate the data to individual OneWeb governance domains but make it easy for data to be shared between these governance domains, but also managing who had access to the data. There is a nice timeline. So, as I said, March 2021 was when the POC kicked off, and we started with 2 governance domains, and this was based in the US region, and the use cases were mainly around monitoring the service between the ground network and the satellite. So then in July 2021, the data was then moved to the UK and data sharing was seen as a default. And initially, data stewards weren't really keen on sharing their data, so we came with the approach that if you wanted to use shared data, you then had to provide your own data. And we started working with the data stewards and the subject matter experts to start building their use cases and data lakes, and then we saw an increase in governance domains by August, where business value was being delivered. And then come November 2021, we started to implement Grafana, which is our visualization tool, which had its main sort of data source, predominantly was Snowflake. We then integrated with data.world as our data catalog, where we pushed the metadata from all our models into data.world, and we started to use different sources of data other than S3, to say data from Kafka, data from Salesforce. And by June 2022, we saw the user increase based by 500%, and also we had around, I think, 1,000 Grafana dashboards by then, so we saw that. And then here's just an example of data in separate governance domains being shared into one governance domain to create an end product. So here we have data coming from the device, performance data, ground network data and satellite data being shared into one systems governance domain, and then this was then used to create a dashboard to troubleshoot the network from end to end. And now some nice numbers. So 2 years later, what we had achieved was that we had this shared responsibility for the confidentiality, the integrity and the availability of data from across the business. So we now have 33 governance domains, and these aren't just operational governance domains. We have data from marketing, we have data from billing, to create these over 150 data products, where we do this by data pipelines, which we have now over 100,000. So this is from ingestion to transformation to validation tests, which we have over 8 million data tests per quarter, which is a nice number. And what we kind of achieved was this decentralized storage, but centralized governance for data, where we are able to control and manage the costs. And here's a nice quote from the Senior VP of Products and Platforms for OneWeb. If you want to take a read, I didn't have to ask him to say this, but yeah, I think that is OneWeb's use case. If I want to hand over to Guy.
Thank you, Nadia. Nadia is very modest on behalf of her team. I think she's undersold some of the challenges here. I came from the satellite industry myself, so I know this very well. This is an industry that takes 10 years to even make the decision to design something. And now you're talking about a team that has gone from nothing to 150 data products across 33 distributed teams in a data mesh in an environment where they're doing things technologically that no one's ever done before, flying satellites in a way that no one's ever done before, with an organizational structure that no one's ever tried before, and they've done it with export requirements and governmental regulations and new technologies, and at a scale that a lot of people might struggle. I think it's on here, a single data set, a single table with 1 trillion data points, 70 billion rows a day goes into one table just collecting telemetry from satellites, and that's in one data product, and they've got 150 of them. So don't underestimate the challenges that Nadia and her team have solved. They are absolutely incredible. So I want to talk a little bit about how we got there from a data products perspective. I started talking about data products back in 2019, when really not a lot of people had heard the concept. Before I came into the data world, my background was software engineering. So I built organizations that in turn built software products. So a product thinking and a product mentality was kind of part of my DNA. And when I came to the data world, I found people doing discrete projects here, picking it up, doing something, dropping it, no concepts of lifecycle management and roadmaps and agility and things like that. So one of the things that I wanted to do when I came to the data world was to try and take this product mentality, this product mindset, and bring it to how we actually manage data. As I say, we started out with these true DataOps principles back in 2019. And then I've been very lucky to work with some amazing customers like Nadia at OneWeb, like Roche Pharmaceuticals. They're not on here, but National Grid, who I was chatting to yesterday. And all of them have been a big part of our data product journey. And I'm not going to claim that I came to them and said, here's how to build data products. And I'm not going to say that they taught me. This was a true collaboration. We've worked with this select group of customers over a number of years. The key distinction here is this is grounded in the real world. There are, frankly, a number of books that you can go and buy or look at that will talk about data products in a very abstract, arm-wavy way, a very theoretical way. There's nothing wrong with that, they're fine. But what we set out to do is say, okay, let's define how we build this in a pragmatic way. What does it mean for a team like Nadia's to actually, on the ground, build one data product, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then start having data products depending on other data products and composing those data products together, and then let's do it at a scale like Nadia said, 150. Talking to another one of our customers yesterday, over 500 data products in production today. So these are some pretty enormous challenges. Along the way, we wrote DataOps for Dummies, and that's really important because DataOps is a fundamental component. It is not possible to achieve the promises of data products, the business need to address those business needs without a DataOps underpinning. DataOps provides the foundational platform, provides the organizational process to allow you to churn out hundreds, sometimes thousands of data products, but not just to turn out the products at the rate. Nadia's talked about 100,000 deployments a quarter, 8 million tests per quarter. You're not doing that if you're thinking about this in a very manual, in a very hand-grown way. The only way to achieve anything like that is to take a full automation DataOps approach. I have to give full credit. Zamak's book, many of you will have heard of, Zamak Dehghani Data Mesh book. She codified a lot of the principles around data products, and almost all of which I agree with, but there's no guidance in there about how to do it. You leave reading that book and say, this is great, now I want to go and do it, but where's the guide? Where's the instructions that give me practical advice? So because of that, we wrote, and we're launching at the show here, Data Products for Dummies. And this book, and you can get it on our stand, but we're also doing We're doing a book signing in the Y-Axis keynote right next door at 6 p.m. today, so you can come and meet in the other authors and get the book signed. But this was designed to give a practitioner's guide, taking all the experience from Nadia and working with Nadia and her team, from Roche, from National Grid and others, in total over 1,000 data products built and in production, and all of that knowledge that we've gathered, that our customers have gathered, all experience, and frankly, all the mistakes along the way, because let's not kid ourselves, this journey doesn't happen without a few bumps in the road. All of those lessons that we've learned, things not to do, are all kind of codified in this book. So if you're thinking about data products journey, you're thinking about embarking on data products, whether you're looking at it from a business perspective or a technology perspective, I strongly recommend it. How am I doing for time? Okay. Final thing here, I don't want to steal the thunder for the book, but I did just want to kind of capture one of the things we spent a lot of time doing is how do we differentiate data products from other things that we've been doing? What makes a data product, essentially? And we spent months, literally months and months and months agonizing over this, and we came down to 10 attributes or characteristics. 7 about the data product itself, and the final 3 about the process and the organization around it. So, first of all, a data product has to be accessible. If I build something and I stick a zip file on a file server, but all my users are using BI tools, I've done all the hard work, I've built everything they want, but it's not accessible. A data product, just like a software product, has to be offered to my consumers in a way that's useful to them, not in a way that's convenient to me. Accessibility. Maybe one of the most important ones when you start operating at scale, they have to be interoperable and composable. Nadia put a great diagram up showing all the different parts of the satellite network, the ground station, the satellite itself, the terminal on the boat, the terrestrial network. All of those are fine, and all those are producing huge amounts of data. But for Nadia's customers in the business, what they want to see is the complete end-to-end. So they have to have all of these data sets coming in such a way, building all these foundational data products that you can then assemble them together. They are interoperable. They work together to form this complete end-to-end view. So they have to be interoperable, and they have to be built in such a way that you can compose them together. You can use your data products as Lego building blocks and build other data products on top of them and other data products on top of them. They have to be backwards compatible. This is something that the data world's done a terrible job at over the years. In the software world, it's unthinkable to build an API that isn't versioned on day 1. Today I release version 1, and at some point in the future, I will need to break it, and so I release version 2. That's been a de facto standard for 20 years. I can count on one hand the number of organizations I've seen deploying version data products and still have quite a few fingers left over. It just isn't a thing in the data world, and it has to be. If we want to get to the point of deploying data products to our consumers in a way that they can trust, we have to be guaranteeing and committing to backwards compatibility, and the only way we can do that without hobbling ourselves is to actually say, hey, we're releasing version 1 of a data product, and when we need to make a change, we'll release version 2, we'll give our consumers a chance to migrate, and then we'll retire version 1 at some point in the future. So backwards compatible and multi-versioning are critical for data products. Trustworthy, sounds simple, but Nadia's customers are literally making $1 million plus decisions based on this data. They're choosing where to put satellites in orbit. They're choosing where to prioritize capacity and bandwidth. They're choosing which countries, which part of the world are going to get more or less capacity, and which satellites are going to turn on and off when, based on this data. And this is a tens of billion-dollar satellite constellation. So they have to be able to trust the data. And there's an enormous onus on the data product producers for that. Exclusive. It's a little bit of a tricky one, but what we mean by this is when you build a data product with defined interfaces, that has to be the only way that your consumers can get access to it. You can't allow them into the back door. You can't allow them to the underlying tables of the raw data. You would never in the software world allow someone to bypass your API and talk to your database directly. That's a big no-no. But in the data world, we kind of fall into the trap of saying, oh, well, it's not in that presentation layer, we'll just give them access to this. That's a real problem. And when I say these are battle-hardened lessons, we've done this, we've had customers do this, and every single time it happens, they've been bitten in the backside and they regretted it. Self-contained. This is, I think, maybe one of the hardest ones architecturally people struggle with. What's the scope of my data product? Do I build one data product that covers my whole organization? Well, that's probably not the right approach. That's data warehouse then. Do I build a data product that just deals with one chip on one board somewhere? Okay, that's probably too narrow. So we know what wrong looks like at both ends, but there's still a big spectrum in the middle. What does that look like? And the simple rule of thumb we've come up with, again, doing thousands of these, is if you can make use of a data product without needing any other data products to support it, for say 90% of use cases, your scope is probably about right. Make it as small as possible, but no smaller, as a rule of thumb. And by the way, all of these are gone into in much more detail in the book. And finally, secure. Yes, it's obvious. it's table stakes, but it needs to be said, and there's a lot of implications to that. But particularly when you talk about the sensitivity, a lot of Nadia's customers are governmental organizations, things like that. You've got to take security very, very seriously. So if you have these 7 attributes, or you can tick these off, or you're on a path to ticking those off, I would say whether you're calling them that or not, you're on a data products journey. But you're not going to get there without 3 fundamental things. You need to be agile. If you're releasing this thing once every 3 months, you can call it whatever you like, but you're not really in the data product world. You need to be releasing this thing weekly, probably daily if you need to. So agility in your development, agility in your deployment is critical. What am I doing for time? Discoverable. Almost the biggest mistake you can make. You put all the work in the world, you build this amazing thing, and then no one can find it. All of the cost, all of the effort, none of the value. So what you produce has got to be discoverable. And finally, and it covers a multitude of sins, you've got to think about things. You've got to manage this in a product managed way. And the nice thing about this is not new. We're not talking about data product management. I used to use the term data product management. It really isn't data product management. It is product management. Go and buy a book that was written 10 years ago about product management in the software world. 98% of that is going to apply here. So it's not a new discipline. It's a discipline we're taking from the software world and making very minor tweaks to work with data. So I would say these are the 10 characteristics, the 10 attributes that over this journey with Nadia and with other customers, we've kind of assembled together. The book goes into a lot more detail. But yeah, that's really what we see as data products. And massive thanks to Nadia and some other customers in the audience for being on this journey with us. Now I'll turn over to Thomas.
Thanks, Guy. Well, to take us a little bit to the back, we said all along, really the DevOps principles and the DataOps principles. Let me just unpack this 2-3 supporting slides, what that actually means and how what Nadia actually achieved. So the very first thing.
We can't hear. Apparently we can't hear you, Thomas.
I don't know. I'll take the mic. I just have no idea. Is it better now? Does it work? Okay. If it works now, continue. All right. So basically what we provide our customers with rounded off, complete, comprehensive development environment that is focusing on the various different parts of the data value journey that we help customers to create and ultimately go and build a data product, right? And with the lens on data products itself, it's very much about what is the contract, what is the specification, such that I can actually define a contract with those people that want to consume the data and those people that are responsible, like the data engineers, to create and consume them. And at the bottom of the screen, we also see things like backward compatibility tests, one of the things Guy touched on, which is really a key enabler, making sure even in your dev cycle, you have yearly feedback before you even moving something into even test, let alone production, right? So making sure you never break backward compatibility is one of the key things. Right, moving to the mic, hopefully that's better. Now, the second part, just catching up on times, is everything is great if you go and actually have developed it, but if you're moving to production, you also want to ensure that you're actually adhering to your data products at a time. So adhering to the contract means making sure you know the basics like name, version, and descriptions, but also understand pretty much what's the metadata that is published. Like typically the data set, a very simple example here based on customers and a couple columns. But as we heard with Nadia, this is very large tables, billions of columns, hundreds of columns, etc., etc. And last but not least, tests. Right. So how can I trust my data is really the other thing. And this is just a glimpse at what we actually deliver. A couple things pass, a couple things give you a warning, some fail, and if we fail, then of course we fill the data pipeline, because what we don't want is crap in, crap out. Right. Very simply put. So those are two things we help our customers with. To bring that back to pretty much what Nadia was talking about, ultimately it's all about helping our customers on the left-hand side building foundational data products, right? For OneWeb, that meant really going through, let's say, device data, performance data, the ground network data, and then satellite telemetry to go and bring that in and just make that even accessible for the teams. But that is where it begins. This is not where it ends. So it is therefore very much about composing the data products, bringing them back in, making them available to the rest of the business, and in the OneWeb's case, actually bringing this up to the dashboard that every business user can work with, including the one big operating screen where hopefully everything is green, right? All right, so that's how we help customers. With that, let's please everybody come up again and just give a quick summary of what we learned today. Nadia, let's go first.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah, as Guy said, we went from 0 to 150 data products real quick in 2 years. So I think we did that with help of guidance from DataOps and their help, and we weren't able to achieve that without them.
Yeah, I think my summary would be, first of all, data products are not this. I'll grab the mic then. Yeah. So, key takeaways from me. First of all, data products are not some new fancy idea. They're not something that someone just invented or sat down, had a couple of hours free and said, I'm going to come up with this new concept. Data products are an evolution of where the data world has been going for the last decade. They are a natural evolution, and they're driven by business demands. They're driven by the fact that the business users have been used to this in the software world. They've been used to getting their results faster. They've been used to get higher quality. They've been used to the fact that they're not the testers anymore. When something gets delivered to them, it's delivered at a very high quality every single time. And those expectations have fallen over into the data world, naturally. And so data products and the data product approach is a very, very natural evolution of, I would say, the journey that the data world's been on for the last decade. And the other piece is the relationship with DataOps. It would not be thinkable in the software world to say, I'm going to go out and build a new software product with a microservice architecture, and I'm going to release a new version every couple of weeks, but by the way, I'm going to go and use waterfall methodology, and I'm going to use software development tools from 20 years ago. Those two things are incompatible. And everyone's laughing because they should laugh because it's completely unthinkable. And yet in the data world, that's kind of what people are trying to do. They're saying, look, I want to meet all these business needs. I want to turn requirements around in hours or most days, not weeks and months. I want to be releasing into production hundreds and hundreds of times a quarter with 99.999% reliability and availability. But I somehow think I'm going to do that by carrying on working the way I was working 5 years ago. And it isn't going to happen. I'm just telling you now, it is not going to happen. The only way to get to that is that you have to build everything on a full automation DataOps foundation. And that's what we've been working on with our data products approach, but then building those underlying technologies for our customers to enable all this stuff to happen.
Right, and to wrap us up, just reinforce the point that everything that we do really has to have a roadmap that applies to data specifically. Treat data as a product, make sure you foster and enable change management throughout the organization, work together as a team, and that's when you can fulfill the promise, like we saw in the example today, to build hundreds, 200s, 300 of data pods and scale it out throughout the organization. And what we mean with scaling out is like hundreds. We don't have thousands yet as a customers, but we have customers that have hundreds of data engineers working throughout the organization and building 300s, 400s of data products. So with that, let's open it up for questions. I keep that up on the screen if you find us later today on our booth and come to the book signing. But we have about, I think, 7 minutes, so open up for questions. Who has the first one?
The guy's got a question.
Trying.
Wow, we're
come
done.
On, you have one. All right, come on, you do it. Give it up.
So, do you have any use cases in the pharma industries for the data products? We are basically from AstraZeneca. It's like a big pharmaceutical company. You have implemented any data products? I've got any benefits for the use cases, similar like Nadia's case?
It's very difficult to understand. I think you said use cases?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What are typically use cases?
Yeah, use cases, yeah.
Yeah, just take back the mic. So audio was a little bit difficult, but I think the question was around what are typical use cases to go build the data products, right? Yeah.
I can.
Oh, in pharmaceutical. Well, I covering this stuff and then passing it along, right? But pretty much the DataOps product is, in that sense, first and foremost horizontal, right? So when it's about the data journey itself, it goes through the journey from ingestion through data quality, standardization, and creating a curated layer, to helping and building this on Snowflake to model, transform it, ultimately do business level testing and bring it out. If I map that over to pharmaceutical, that typically also means connecting, let's say, to your IoT devices, bring sensor data in, and work with that kind of data, and then just scale it out and bring that in. But other than that, I think the technology scales, and OneWeb isn't the pharmaceutical example, but as you hear, it's terabytes of data and billions of rows, so that kind of data is possible. But maybe one of you want to add? Guy, you up?
Well, the other thing I was going to add is that 12:40 next door in the Y-Axis keynote, we're doing a data products panel. One of the people on that panel is Paul Rankin, and he's the head of the data platform that produces all these data products for Roche Pharmaceuticals. And one of the things we're talking about is use cases. He'll be able to give you firsthand, but he's been doing this for a very long time. He will give you some great examples. There's a question down here. Sorry.
I was just, I'm interested in versioning the data itself, as well as the components and the rules and everything else, particularly in Snowflake. How are you versioning the data? Are you creating new instances of columns? Are you creating new tables for every version of the data products? Are you abstracting it through some kind of views, or how are you going about solving that problem?
Great question, thanks, Luke. So there's a couple of different ways to do it, and it really depends on the nature of your change. So like a good example would be, and a common one we see is someone will say, okay, my current version of the interface of my data product has got a view, and it's a single denormalized view, but it turns out that a whole bunch of my customers need this normalized out, or vice versa. But it's a presentation layer thing. So at that point, you wouldn't fork right the way back at kind of the ingestion layer or anything. So you're not going to ingest data twice or transform data twice. You're probably going to have either two presentation layers or even a presentation backwards compatibility layer. You might move to version 2, and version 1 actually becomes a view on that. But there are obviously much more fundamental changes, essentially as you travel left down your pipeline, where it might be entirely possible. It's very rare that you would ingest data twice, because usually the two versions are still based on the same fundamental source. Not always, but usually. But you can fork right at that point. You can say, okay, I'm going to ingest data once, but I'm going to have two complete paths. One that curates, manipulates, transforms the data in one way. And an example of that might be I'm moving from a Kimball form to a data vault. It's a completely legitimate way of doing it, but you're going to be doing it way on the left-hand side. So at that point, you're going to have essentially the question is where your pipeline bifurcates at that point. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. I'd say from what we've seen, 80 to 90% are usually kind of presentation layer, and very often just a couple of different views will help. But yeah, we've seen it go all the way back, and we were talking to a customer yesterday who said, doing data vault, and just suddenly organizational change. Data vault's not right for us. We've got to go a different way. Can't just change that on users, it's going to explode. So at that point you say, right, now I have to build a second path right the way from the left hand side. I'll maintain those two things for 6, 9, 12 months, give users a chance to migrate, and then that in that case the data vault goes away. Thanks. What question at the back? We're the only people that can't hear the questions.
It's kind of lip read.
Get some extra steps today.
I saw you said it's very important to make data products discoverable. Mm-hmm. What's the main thing you do to make them discoverable?
A great question with a really simple answer. Use a data catalog. That's the tool that the industry has used for the last however long. Nothing we do is business facing. We're not producing anything that faces business users. We don't intend to. That's not what we do. Our job is to build these things and build up a massive rich set of metadata. We know where the data came from, how it was transformed, how it was tested, what data product it belongs to, how it was versioned. We know everything about it, and then we take that information and we push it into a data catalog. So a Calibra or a data.world or an Elation or an Atlas. So for us, those are the business-facing tools. That's how the rest of the world is going to discover those data catalogs. But it makes those so much more powerful because those tools are always only as valuable as the freshness and the validity of the data in them. So the fact that they're being updated 20 times a day with guaranteed, accurate, up-to-date, rich metadata in turn makes the data catalogs much, much more valuable. And I think we're now probably going to get kicked out. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the questions, and hopefully see you at 12:40 next door in the keynote.